I'm going back to my hometown to give birth. You're in the way, so can you please move out? One day, after coming back from work, I found my sister, who had gotten married and moved out years ago, in my room. She was showing off her pregnant belly. Even seeing her like this, I couldn't say anything. I just stood there, shocked. My sister let out a rude laugh and said, "Having an old maid like you around is just a nuisance. I threw away everything in the room to make it easier for you to leave, so you should be thankful." Everything was normal in my room when I left for work in the morning, but now it was completely empty. There was no bed, table, rug, or curtains, nothing. The only thing left was my sister standing defiantly in the middle of the room. "Your phone and wallet are in your bag, right? So you won't die of exposure, and you shouldn't be mooching off our parents anymore. It's about time you started living on your own." I didn't think about taking my things back or kicking my sister out. I just wanted to leave because I didn't want to see her face anymore. As I turned my back, I could hear my sister laughing uncontrollably. "You can't say anything even now, aren't you too weak?" I ignored her mockery and walked down the hallway. My father was on the phone in the living room, and my mother was probably preparing dinner. With my father's cheerful voice and my mother's humming in the background, I walked out the front door. Breathing in the night air, I readjusted my bag on my shoulder and headed toward the hotel in the downtown area. On the way, it suddenly hit me, who's going to pay for the house's mortgage from now on? Hi, I'm Nancy, a 27-year-old office worker. Besides my office job, I have a side job doing things I love. I dabble in video editing, web writing, and running a blog. I live a steady life, but I'm not very interested in love or marriage, even though society expects people my age to think about it. One reason for this is that I enjoy my work. Another reason is that my sister was always treated like a princess at home, which made me feel left out. So, I don't really feel the desire to build a happy family. I always lived at home with my parents. I share household chores with my mom, although I mostly do them myself. My mom comes home from her part-time job feeling really tired, and seeing her like that makes me feel I should take care of the household chores since I'm younger. Ever since I started working, I've been contributing double the amount to our household expenses compared to a friend of mine who lives alone in New York. I'm more of an indoor person who likes studying and didn't go out much, even during my student days. So I don't have many desires for material things, and aside from saving, I didn't have much use for the money I earned. Even after becoming a working adult, I didn't go out much, so I contributed more to the household expenses, thinking it would ease my parents' burden a bit. Plus, since last year, I've been putting in money for the mortgage at my parents' request. My parents seem to think that since I'm responsible and earn a decent living, it's no problem for me to contribute more towards the household expenses and mortgage. However, I feel like my parents aren't that interested in me. Their attention has always been on my sister, Maria, who's a year younger than me. Maria is outgoing and very active. She used to go out every weekend during her student days. My parents naturally assumed that Maria's lifestyle required money, so even when she was living at home, they never asked her to contribute to the household expenses, let alone the mortgage. It seems like my parents have ingrained the idea that I, the older sister, am low maintenance, while Maria requires more attention. A while ago, Maria moved out to live on her own. Her place of work isn't far from our parents' house, and I wondered why she wanted to live alone. When I asked her, she said, "Because I want to experience living by myself. I want to go out at night and have my boyfriend over." That was far from the answer I was expecting. I thought she wanted to make things easier for our parents or wanted to be independent. On the other hand, I had no intention of leaving home, thinking it was natural to help each other out since we're a family living together, even if it means putting in a bit more for the household expenses. When I returned home after a while, Maria was waiting for me. "Hey, I'm getting married and I want you to come to both families' gatherings. Would you?" She said it was going to be held at a traditional restaurant in New York and told me, "Make sure you wear proper clothes, okay? If you wear your usual plain clothes, I'll be laughed at." I didn't own any flashy clothes, so I decided to attend in my usual formal clothes, as it was the most respectful attire I had. Maria's fiancé seemed sincere and was a genuinely nice young man. "Nice to meet you," he said, leaving a very good impression on me. I thought Maria had chosen a really good partner for herself and felt quite sisterly, hoping being with him would calm her down a bit. Initially, both families were quite formal and tense, but as the drinks flowed, the formality and tension eased and the conversation shifted towards talks of children after marriage. Our family embarrassingly has our eldest daughter, Nancy, who is almost 30 and still unmarried with no plans of marriage, so it looks like we'll only be able to see grandchildren from our younger daughter, Maria. We're so eager to see them, my parents said. When I get married, I want to have kids right away. Maybe 3, Maria said, and the conversation got more animated. Suddenly, I noticed Maria's husband's once cheerful smile had turned into a strained expression, looking uncomfortable. I felt the same discomfort and wished the evening would end soon. After that, my parents started doting on Maria as an investment for their first grandchild. If Maria mentioned that eating certain foods made it easier to get pregnant, they would immediately go buy it and tell her, "Maria, eat a lot of this." There was a day they went shopping together for dresses after hearing tight clothes might be why you can't get pregnant. If someone said visiting a certain place brought blessings of children, they even go on a trip together. My parents always acted on whatever Maria suggested, so to me it was just them doing their usual thing. However, one day Maria made a sarcastic comment to me, "Because you're not married and not making any effort to show a grandchild's face, I have to go through all this trouble. Must be nice for you living the easy single life. Don't you want to get married and move out? Oh, but with that plain face of yours, no man would come near you. You need a bit more appeal. Should I teach you how to do your makeup?" She laughed. I was irked by her words, but I knew arguing back would only lead to her throwing a fit, making things worse, so I chose to stay silent. Maria has always been confident that she's more loved by our parents than I am, often speaking boldly to me. Then one day, Maria got pregnant. Even someone like her gets visited by the stork. I wondered if Maria could really become a mother, but remembering her husband, I thought maybe it would be okay with him. Maria quit her job easily, saying, "Being pregnant, I don't want to be a burden at work, and I want to focus on raising my child." However, her husband seemed to think that raising a child and having a stay-at-home life wasn't realistic with his earnings alone. But Maria didn't listen to him and quit her job on her own accord. One day when I returned from work, I noticed my room's door was slightly open. I'm a neat person, so I never leave closets or drawers open and always close the door tightly. My parents wouldn't have entered to clean since I do all the cleaning. Apprehensively, I opened the door to my room and was shocked. Everything was gone. I wasn't one for having a lot of stuff, but things I've cherished since childhood were supposed to be stored in labeled boxes in the closet. My parents bought me a dictionary for my 10th birthday, my grandparents gave me a wallet when I turned 15, and now my diploma, certificates, trophies, and albums were all gone. These were items I kept because no matter how worn out or old, they were precious to me. Everything that was supposed to be there until this morning had disappeared without a trace. Standing alone in the empty room, I heard a familiar voice from behind. "Oh, did you come back? I decided to come back home for my childbirth." Looking at my sister's face, I immediately knew she must have moved out my stuff. "Maria, where did you put my things in the closet?" I asked in a panic, but my sister said with a laugh, "Why are you so flustered? It wasn't anything important, right? It was just junk." Hearing my precious belongings referred to as junk, anger surged within me. "What's junk to you is important to me. Give them back now. And how dare you move all my stuff out while I'm not around? That's insane." It must have been the first time she saw me raise my voice like that, so she was surprised with wide eyes. She spat out, "I've already thrown them away." I think this is the first time in my 27 years of life that I've been this angry, and I couldn't stop. Enough is enough. It's outrageous to throw away someone's belongings without permission. Put everything back right now. But my sister, unapologetic, said, "It's already been picked up by the garbage truck. It's impossible to get it back now," looking at me as if I were ridiculous. Then she added, "What's the big deal anyway, getting so mad over some junk? Are you crazy? Don't yell like that, it's bad for my baby," while blatantly rubbing her belly. And then she continued, "I've decided to keep living here even after the baby is born. It's going to be hard after childbirth, and Mom and Dad want to see their grandchild every day. Since Mike is going to be staying here too, just my room won't be enough, right? So I decided to use your room too. You understand, right? You're such a disgrace to our parents." I was completely flabbergasted by her utterly selfish actions. Coming home for childbirth is supposed to be a temporary stay before and after giving birth, but she's planning to live here with her husband and child. That's not a temporary stay, that's moving in. And on top of that, she's unilaterally branding me as a disgrace. My anger just boiled over. "Do you even realize how disgraceful you are, staying at home without getting married? I'm going to show our parents their grandchild and live here so they can see my baby every day. Who do you think is really helping our parents?" It was clear she was blaming me, but I couldn't just stand there and listen. If you want to live in this house as a family, then it's something the whole family should discuss. Especially since you want to use my room, you should have said something beforehand. if you had a set date to come back. But before I could finish, my sister cut me off by banging on my room door loudly. Shut up. See, you're always making a fuss about everything. That's why I made it so you'd have to leave. It's so annoying. That's just her being defensive. She's the one at fault for planning to use someone's room and throwing out the belongings of the person currently living there, yet she talks as if she's the victim. My sister kept banging on the door over and over. Get lost. Disappear. Never come back. I was just dumbfounded. Fine, I'll leave as you wish. I don't have any belongings to pack anyway, so no need for packing time. The anger that had built up so much had now vanished into sheer astonishment. I even felt like I never wanted to see her again. I turned around and headed straight for the entrance. My parents didn't seem to notice me leaving. Just after I had gotten home, my dad was on the phone, probably bragging to a relative about how his pregnant daughter was coming back to live with them permanently. My mom seemed to be in the kitchen, possibly making my sister's favorite dishes, humming a tune. I wasn't living with my family expecting anything in return. Even as children, I understood the difference in how my sister and I were treated. She had a charm about her and knew how to sweet-talk our parents. But even as an adult taking care of most things at home, this is how I'm treated, despite allocating most of my salary to household expenses and the mortgage to make our lives easier. They welcome my sister, who hasn't contributed a dime, with open arms. The negative aspects of my parents I had tried to ignore, along with my sister's actions, morphed into disdain. Without saying goodbye or see you later, I opened the front door. No one, neither my parents nor my sister, called out to me before the door closed behind me. A week later, at the end of the month, it was payday. Normally, it would be the day I transferred living expenses and mortgage payments into my dad's account, but I didn't make any deposits. I had no obligation to pay the mortgage for a house I no longer lived in. The mortgage was originally taken out by my dad, so it should have been planned with his income in mind, ensuring it could be paid back without strain. There shouldn't be any financial issues just because I stopped contributing. However, my mom called me in a panic a while later. Nancy, it's terrible. We've received a delinquency notice for the mortgage. I checked, and there's no money in your father's account. She rattled on before I could even respond, clearly flustered. Nancy, do you know why? You didn't withdraw it, did you? Contrary to her panicked tone, I responded calmly. All I did was stop making deposits. I didn't withdraw anything. If you're talking about a missed mortgage payment, then it means the automatic withdrawal didn't go through, right? Did you make sure there was enough balance on the withdrawal date? You didn't make a deposit, she exclaimed. Why? My mom muttered in utter confusion, which made me just as puzzled. Well, because it was agreed that I'd contribute to the living expenses and the mortgage since I was living at home. If I moved out, I wouldn't keep paying, right? I'm not living there anymore. It seemed like she finally understood after I said that, as I could hear her catching her breath softly. Right, then you don't need to pay for living expenses, but could you still contribute to the mortgage? You should have enough to spare even living alone, right? Sorry, but that's impossible. My current rent alone costs $10,000. I'm stretched as it is, so I can't afford to pay for a mortgage on a house I'll never return to. $10,000? You're just an employee, right? How could you afford such a place? My mom's voice was filled with shock. I sighed. It's the same amount I used to give home every month, remember? Asking me now makes it clear you really weren't interested in me. In that case, I can't discuss money matters with you anymore. Right now, it seems like you only see me as a wallet. I could hear my mom whimpering on the other end of the line. Her repeated no was more feeble than I'd ever heard. I didn't feel sorry for her. It's been a month since I quietly left home, yet there's no concern for my well-being, only money. It's painfully clear they're interested only in my money, not me. That's why I never mentioned that besides my main job, I also do a wide range of side jobs online, making my total income far surpass my father's monthly salary. I had been contributing $10,000 a month partly as savings to the mortgage that still has 15 years left, but my mom thought that was my father's income. Given his age and years of service, it's perhaps understandable she thought so, but didn't she ever notice the exact amount being deposited every month? Even a glance at my dad's pay slip would show otherwise. Ultimately, she didn't care where the money came from. That's probably why she didn't notice when the monthly income dropped by more than half. Only when the mortgage withdrawals failed due to insufficient funds, leading to a collection notice by mail, did she finally realize. Realizing only after it's gone is very much like her, and I couldn't help but give a thin smile. Lately, caught up in first brainchild fever, it seems they've been splurging on expensive items like a baby crib, stroller, designer baby clothes, and maternity photos, all because my sister asked for them. But if Nancy doesn't make a deposit, we won't be able to make ends meet from now on. Could you send some money as a remittance? I already told you, that's impossible. Why not ask Maria, who's going to live with you, to contribute some to the living expenses? If that's not enough, maybe Mom could work more hours. My words were met with a shriek from my mom. Maria just gave birth. How can I increase my hours when she needs help with the baby? It'd be too much. Are you suggesting Maria should work too? How can you say something so awful? I was shocked by my sister's selfish actions. Coming home for childbirth is supposed to be temporary, but she planned to stay permanently with her husband and baby. That's not a temporary stay. That's moving in. She even called me a disgrace for staying at home without being married. I couldn't believe how she turned everything around, blaming me. She said, "Do you realize how disgraceful you are? I'm going to show our parents their grandchild and live here so they can see my baby every day. Who do you think is really helping our parents?" I couldn't just stand there and listen. If you want to live here, it's something the whole family should discuss, especially since you want to use my room. You should have told me beforehand if you had a set date to come back, I said. Before I could finish, she banged on my room door loudly. "Shut up, see, you're always making a fuss about everything? That's why I made it so you'd have to leave. It's so annoying." Her words were defensive and absurd. She was at fault for planning to use my room and throwing out my belongings. Yet she acted like the victim. She kept banging on the door, yelling, "Get lost, disappear, never come back." I was dumbfounded. "Fine, I'll leave as you wish. I don't have any belongings to pack anyway, so no need for packing time." My anger turned into sheer astonishment, and I felt like I never wanted to see her again. I turned and headed straight for the entrance. My parents didn't seem to notice me leaving. My dad was on the phone, probably bragging about how his pregnant daughter was coming back to live with them permanently. My mom was in the kitchen, possibly making my sister's favorite dishes, humming a tune. I never expected anything in return from my family. Even as children, I'd understood the difference in how my sister and I were treated. My sister had a charm and knew how to sweet-talk our parents. But even as an adult taking care of most things at home, this is how I'm treated. Despite allocating most of my salary to household expenses and the mortgage, they welcomed my sister, who hasn't contributed a dime, with open arms. The negative aspects of my parents I had tried to ignore, along with my sister's actions, turned into disdain. Without saying goodbye or see you later, I opened the front door. No one called out to me as the door closed behind me. A week later, it was payday. Normally, I would transfer living expenses and mortgage payments into my dad's account, but I didn't make any deposits. I had no obligation to pay the mortgage for a house I no longer lived in. The mortgage was originally taken out by my dad, planned with his income in mind. There shouldn't be any financial issues just because I stopped contributing. However, my mom called me in a panic. "Nancy, it's terrible. We've received a delinquency notice for the mortgage. I checked, and there's no money in your father's account." She rattled on, clearly flustered. "Nancy, do you know why? You didn't withdraw it, did you?" All I did was stop making deposits. I didn't withdraw anything. If you're talking about a missed mortgage payment, then it means the automatic withdrawal didn't go through, right? Did you make sure there was enough balance on the withdrawal date? "But why?" my mom muttered in utter confusion. "Well, because it was agreed that I contribute to the living expenses and the mortgage since I was living at home. If I moved out, I wouldn't keep paying, right? I'm not living there anymore." It seemed like she finally understood. I could hear her catching her breath softly. "Right, then you don't need to pay for living expenses, but could you still contribute to the mortgage? You should have enough to spare even living alone, right?" "Sorry, but that's impossible. My current rent alone costs $10,000. I'm stretched as is, so I can't afford to pay for a mortgage on a house I'll never return to." $10,000? You're just an employee, right? How could you afford such a place? My mom's voice was filled with shock. "It's the same amount I used to give home every month, remember? Asking me now, it's clear you really weren't interested in me. In that case, I can't discuss money matters with you anymore. Right now, it seems like you only see me as a wallet." I could hear my mom whimpering on the other end of the line. She repeated, "No," more feebly than I'd ever heard. I didn't feel sorry for her. It had been a month since I quietly left home, yet there was no concern for my well-being, only money. It was painfully clear they were interested only in my money, not me. I didn't mean it like that. If Maria and her husband are going to live with you, it makes sense for them to contribute to the living expenses. Didn't I do the same? Plus, Mike is still working, right? Are you planning to live together without him contributing anything? I tried to respond as calmly as possible to avoid agitating her further. There was silence. It might be okay if it's just for the homecoming period, but Maria said she's going to live there from now on, and Dad seems to think the same. If that's the case, it would be better for everyone living together to discuss how to handle finances and contributions. I've already moved out, so I won't be part of that conversation. There was no response. Well, I'm going to hang up now. I don't plan to contact you, Dad, or Maria anymore, so I'll block all of you once we hang up. You can delete my contact information too. Bye. I ended the call on my smartphone. The last thing I heard was my mom's stunned, "What?" Before she could call again, I quickly set my phone to block all three of them. After completing the setting, I took a deep breath and walked over to the window of my living room. From my apartment on the 25th floor, I had to look down to see people outside. After leaving home, I moved into what you'd call a high-rise luxury apartment. Actually, my side income had exploded, allowing me to save up to $20,000 a month even after sending $10,000 home. Remembering how my mom would spend any money she had, I'm glad I never suggested paying off the mortgage in a lump sum. After all, my parents wanted me out. Maria couldn't have moved my bed and table by herself when she was nearly due. Clearly, someone helped her. While I'd like to think Mike wouldn't clear out a room of its lived-in items if such a large-scale move had happened, both my parents would have noticed. They were home all day when I was the only one out working, yet they said nothing when I got back and ignored me as I left. Whether they were manipulated by Maria or not, it's clear my parents were complicit in driving me out. Realizing my parents and sister were all the same made me give up everything and decide to leave home at that moment. If I had paid off the mortgage in full, the three of them would be living comfortably in a spacious house. I couldn't stand the thought of that. That's why I chose a high-rise condo for my new home. I did it out of spite because I remembered how excited we all got watching TV as a family, talking about how we'd love to live in such a place. But living here turned out to be far more comfortable than I expected. Having my own place with furniture I picked out was amazing. I earned my own money, and it felt great. I might have exaggerated a bit to impress my mom about how expensive my place was. She never caught on. What really made me happy was getting along well with my neighbors. I thought there might be competition about salaries or cars, but everyone was humble, making it a nice place to live. 30 months later, my peaceful life changed suddenly. As I left work one day, my sister grabbed my shoulder. She looked tired from taking care of her baby, but she still had her charm. She was upset and wanted to talk. I tried to brush her off gently, but when her eyes filled with tears, I couldn't refuse. Reluctantly, I suggested we go to a cafe nearby. She agreed happily. Then, out of nowhere, she dropped a bombshell. She'd been having an affair, and her husband Mike found out. He wanted a divorce because a DNA test showed the baby wasn't his. She spoke softly, sensing I didn't want to hear it. Each new detail confused me more. She mentioned something about terminating parental rights and not paying child support or alimony. She turned to me, asking if I, being well off, could fix everything. I was speechless with shock. It seemed reasonable not to pay child support if the child wasn't his, but I couldn't believe my sister was asking me to sort it out. "Why don't you ask the guy you were with?" I suggested. "I can't," she said. "It was just a fling. I liked him, but I cut ties when I found out I was pregnant. I thought Mike would forgive me." Her selfishness amazed me. She blamed everyone else but herself. I couldn't pay the alimony, and our parents couldn't either. She assumed I would bail her out despite treating me poorly in the past. Disgusted, I stood up abruptly. She paled, apologizing for throwing away my things without asking. "I despise you," I said coldly. "I won't help you." Ignoring her cries and pleas, I left money on the table and walked out. She followed, hoping to guilt me into returning. I kept walking, avoiding quiet areas where she might confront me. After my long walk, I returned home feeling relieved. But just as I locked my door, the intercom rang unexpectedly. It was Maria, demanding money and making threats. She knew where I lived now, which terrified me. I managed to call building security, and they swiftly removed her from the premises. Thankfully, she never bothered me again after that. Later on, I heard that Maria and Mike's disputes escalated into a legal battle. Maria eventually had to pay alimony but avoided child support since a DNA test proved the child wasn't Mike's. She had no savings, so my parents had to cover her debts by selling our family home. This change caused stress and strained their finances. My mom took on part-time work, and Maria juggled her job with childcare. Despite the hardships, Maria's child is healthy. Meanwhile, my career flourished. I received a promotion and found success with my side businesses, including writing. My writing even became a bestseller, boosting my income and bringing me joy. I've found a balance between work and personal life, feeling genuinely happy and fulfilled every day.